This video will talk about the structures and function of the parts of the alimentary canal. We begin with the mouth. In the mouth is where ingestion takes place. The teeth grinds the food into smaller pieces, and this will increase the surface area to volume ratio for enzyme action. The tongue rolls the food into a bolus for us to swallow, and the moment the food enters the mouth, or even if we're thinking about the food, salivary glands will secrete saliva, which contains salivary amylase. When we swallow, the food goes into the esophagus, and the presence of food in the esophagus will increase the peristaltic movement from the esophagus to the rectum. Okay, this is because there are longitudinal and circular muscles which are contracting and relaxing without our own conscious control. This allows the food to travel in one direction from the esophagus to the rectum, so it's possible to eat upside down, but I will not recommend it. Okay. Then peristalsis also churns the food if it's in the stomach. When you swallow food that is solid, it ends up as chyme. Okay, churning not only makes it semi-solid into chyme, it also mixes the food with the gastric juices in the stomach. Then the similar peristaltic movement in the small intestine mixes the food with the intestinal juices. Now in the stomach, we have gastric pits that leads from the gastric glands to the gastric cavity. So this area here where the food is or will come into is called the cavity, the gastric cavity. And the gastric glands secrete juices containing hydrochloric acid and enzymes. The hydrochloric acid gives the stomach a pH 2. That is the optimum pH of pepsine to work. Right. These are two sphincters. Basically, the sphincters will close once you stop eating. These two sphincters will close, and it will churn. It will make the stomach churn. Close it so that as the stomach is churning, the food will not come out of your stomach into the esophagus. For the small intestine, the function of the small intestine is to complete digestion of food and absorption of digested food. Now, before we go into the structure of the small intestine, let me finish by saying that large intestine, or the colon as it is also called, is the place where the absorption of water and mineral salts take place. Then the rectum is where the temporary storage of feces containing undigested material before you decide to go to the toilet to empty it. The small intestine is 6 meters long to ensure there's enough time for complete digestion and for absorption of glucose, amino acids, and fatty acids and glycerol. Okay. The first adaptation of the small intestine are the folds, the villi, and the microvilli in the epithelium. This allows an increased surface area for diffusion of digested food. The thin epithelium, this is one cell thick, and when you say one cell thick means if I look at here, it's made up of one cell thickness. This reduces the diffusion distance from the small intestine, which is in this portion of where my finger is pointing, to the blood capillaries. There's also a concentration gradient. There's a higher concentration of concentration of glucose, amino acids, and fatty acids inside the small intestine than in the blood capillary or the lacteals for fatty acids and glycerol. So there is always this concentration gradient because the blood is always flowing. So when glucose and amino acid goes into the blood will be taken away, and there is always a concentration gradient for diffusion to take place. So that is the structure and function of the parts of the alimentary canal.